Hello, this is Cityscape, our regular vodcast of people, place, and ideas that impact Livonia. I'm Dan West with the Livonia Chamber of Commerce. Our guest today is a familiar voice to local sports fans as he has been involved in Detroit sports media for 4 decades. Art Regner is a longtime Livonia resident and a graduate of Franklin High School. He studied political science and journalism at the University of Michigan. His career includes work as a television and radio producer, sports radio personality, and an author of 3 books. Today, Art is show host, editor, and podcaster for the Detroit Red Wings. And for those who have heard him on the radio, you know he has never been shy to talk about his hometown. And today, he works as a community volunteer on the board of the Livonia Community Foundation. Art, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure, Dan, anytime.
So tell us about what it was like growing up as a kid for you here in Livonia.
It was kind of cool because I spent every morning in the summertime or in the springtime and fall playing baseball at Cleveland, and then just walking right down West Chicago to Emerson and going to school. So and then Franklin, of course. I mean, Franklin was a great experience for me. I always enjoyed high school. As editor of the student newspaper, so it was. I always kind of wanted to do what I'm doing. I always kind of knew that I wasn't going to be a good enough athlete to be a professional. I mean, my ultimate dream was to play, hockey for Michigan and then the Red Wings or the Canadians. I mean, I was very specific about the teams that I would play for. But, I just knew that wasn't going to come out and wasn't going to happen. So, I've been in journalism since Emerson. Working on that student paper from 8th grade on.
Now, many of us heard your voice for the first time when you were one of the original on-air talents at Detroit's first all-sports radio station, WDFN, in the mid-1990s. Why don't you tell us about how that job came up for you and that whole experience?
I knew that if I wanted to be a radio, and I use this term loosely, air talent, I would have to go into personality or talk radio. And it just so happened DFN was starting. I went in and talked to Lorna Gladstone, who was starting the station, and I was the first person they hired. She hired me as executive producer, so I hired a lot of people. I hired a lot of the air talent, Jamie Samuelson, God rest his soul. I hired Jamie from Chicago, Jennifer Hammond, Ike the Mega Man Griffin, Stoney, who I've known from our TV days together forever. So it was just a natural progression for me that I hired all this talent, and they really needed somebody who, who knew Detroit. Some of the guys were from out of state, and I grew up here, and I knew this was my philosophy going in. I love the Red Wings. I love Michigan. I love the Tigers. I'm pleasantly surprised by the Pistons. Whatever they do, I'm into it. And then, of course, the Lions, I hate. And so, and I was kind of Lions free. And then, that's what started the Sunday afternoon sit-in when I'd have the meltdowns after Lions losses, or then, ice time where I'd be, Captain Red Wing or something, endeared myself to the players, and, Red Wings, my Red Wings and all that.
Tell us one of your more memorable interviews that you've done.
Wow. I've interviewed a lot of people.
I know you have. It's hard to pick one. I know.
Yeah, well, I just had a great interview with Steve Yzerman, who I've known since he was, a teenager. And that turned out to be pretty cool. The interview itself was like 15 minutes, and we talked like 10 minutes before the interview began, and then we talked for almost an hour after. And, Steve's a very... I told him this, and I think what stood out is I said, and this shows you everything you want to know about Steve Yzerman. I said to him, I go, I can't believe I'm going to tell you this, but I think you could end up being a better executive than you were a player. I go, and that's stunning. He goes, or worse. I could be worse. He goes, and if I'm worse, you're going to tell me, And so we started laughing. I mean, I really think that one of the best interviews I think I ever did, and I was in college, is Gerald Ford was not president, but he came back to Michigan quite often. And in a political science class that I was in, I was able to interview him for the student radio station. And he was just a really down-to-earth and wonderful guy. And I always remember that. I mean, if you get to talk to a former president of the United States, that's cool. And then,
and you're a college student, right?
I was probably a junior. So what am I, 20 maybe?
Well, and that's a good segue to my next question. You were a prominent member of the media covering the 97, 98, 02, and 08 Red Wings Stanley Cup championships. And obviously a ton of memories, ton of moments. Is there one thing that jumps out at you? Obviously a lot of fun being in those victory locker rooms and stuff like that. But talk about maybe a certain moment or something that really stood out to you during that time.
I'll tell you what's kind of interesting about that was when I was at DFN, even though I was the Red Wing guy and I covered them, when the playoffs started, I never went to a game. I never went to a playoff game because I was on pre and post-game show, and then in between periods I would take calls. So everybody else was at these games. So when the Red Wings won their first cup in 97, I told Greg Henson, who was the program director, he said, well, if they win tonight, and it looked like, they're up 3-0 against the Flyers, I figured, yeah, they'll probably win. Because, they were good, they were prime, they had been disappointed for so many years. These guys were ready to win the cup. I could feel it, I could just see it. I knew them all. I mean, I knew that, they were playing for keeps. And so I told Henson, I said, listen, man, if a Detroit sports team wins a world championship, I'm not going to toss to a nationally syndicated show. I am only going to toss to a local show, here, so people from Detroit can talk about it. I mean, we should just we should celebrate it. So little did I know that the next show after the Red Wings won was at 11 a.m. the next day. So I ended up staying on the air the whole time, which then after every cup.
So for 12 hours, 11 a.m.
At least. Yeah. Well, I used to do radiothons. It wasn't, but like Marty LaPointe called me like 4 times. And each time, let's say he was feeling happier and happier with each phone call. But I stayed on. And the reason I'm telling this story because the next show after me was called In the Paint. It was Sunday. They won the cup on a Saturday night.
Yes.
Was Sunday. Was Tim McCormick's In the Paint. Well, I knew Tim McCormick as a Michigan basketball player, and I really liked Tim McCormick. I have enormous amounts of respect. And Tim McCormick came into the studio as I was wrapping up. I'm saying, okay, that's it. In the Paint's coming up next. Thanks, everyone, for joining me, and, this is great and all this kind of stuff. He walked in, and he shut the door, and he got really emotional. I mean emotional. And he said to me, he goes, Art, I want to tell you something. What you just did, it's one of the greatest things that anybody has ever done for this city. He goes, by staying up all night, he goes, I can't tell you, I just want to thank you on behalf of everybody, every sports fan in Detroit. And I'm not saying that to pump myself up, I'm really not. But coming from somebody like him, who I actually respect, who's an athlete too, and a good athlete. They won an NIT championship, his Michigan team, when the NIT was pretty big. For me, I don't know if it gave me validation, but it made me feel good. Then maybe I got it right this time because I didn't want
your gut said, no, we're not going to throw it to a syndicated show for the championship. So you wrote it out, and you had calls all night, right?
Well, I had calls all the time. I had people saying, I went to bed and now I'm waking up with you, and I have to be honest, it kind of endeared me to the Red Wings. I mean, the Red Wing players thought that was great. They just thought, wow, that's really cool. But I believed in that team enough, but I also believed in the fans. I knew that the sports fans in Detroit or the people of Michigan, if they won, I knew that they would want to talk about it. I mean, I knew a lot of people weren't going to be going to bed, maybe passing out, but not so much going to sleep. But, I just knew, and I just couldn't do it. And, and Greg looked at me, the next day, called me when I was back home and said, yeah, he goes, you know what, that was probably the right call, but getting validation from Tim McCormick, I guess that's one of the things I'll never really forget.
Well, Art, I thank you for your time and speaking with us today. I'm sure we could go on and on for a long time.
Hey, I want to talk about my favorite Livonia haunts,
So we'll have to talk about Bates at another time, I guess.
Right. Yeah, sorry, Dan. I know I talked way too long.
So it's all good. But I appreciate you finding time. I know you're busy. I appreciate you coming out. And I thank all of you for watching this edition of Cityscape. We'll see you next time.